All right, so I want to start off with a big mistake that I made when I first started teaching. And as I look around, I actually see a lot of people making the same mistake. And so some of you might be making the mistake, I'm not sure. But it goes like this. Basically, anytime you start a course, you ask yourself a series of questions. And the first question you might ask yourself is, what are you going to teach? Like, what is it you're trying to do? What is the content that you're going to cover? And then you start figuring out, how am I going to do that? How am I going to deliver this content? How am I going to teach? And then you might, at the end of the day, ask yourself also why. Why is this stuff important? And then you sort of revise and you go back to the top. So this is how it worked in my situation. I entered this huge lecture hall at Kansas State University, and I was extremely well prepared. I'd spent months dreaming of being a professor someday, so like I was really excited about getting up in front of these hundreds of students, and I had carefully scripted, everything that I wanted to say during that time. I scripted the entire syllabus. Every reading was picked, very with great concern for the content. And then I just thought about, okay, so how am I going to do this? I didn't really think about it much. I just thought, well, I'm going to go in and lecture, and I'm going to have them read stuff, and that's how it's going to work. And it turns out it didn't work very well. We did a survey and found that students were completing about 49% of the readings assigned to them. And even worse, they were finding only 26% relevant to their life. So you noticed how we started with a what, we had kind of a not very well thought out how, and we ended up with nobody understanding why. Or 26%. But it's a 74% failure rate on the most important question on the board. And then these types of things started coming out, buying $100 textbooks they never open, paying for class but not showing up. And ultimately then, I figured out that these questions were actually sort of upside down. That ultimately somehow we had to flip this and first we had to ask why, and then how, and then what. And I was thinking about this in relation to what you guys do. And this is really important for what you guys do. Because if you start with what, the first thing you realize is there are three problems with what in your field. First, there are way too many whats to be learned. And so you end up with this course that just keeps getting bigger and bigger, too much ground to cover, and so on. The second thing is that the whats are changing all the time. And so you can't, there's no way to keep up. And you could add more, but then, back to the first problem, you got too many whats. And then the third problem with the whats is that they're not sufficient. You're being asked by administrators to add on top of this critical thinking and other skills, and I'm going to tell you today that critical thinking isn't even enough. Like, that's not even sufficient. I'm going to try to get you to elevate beyond critical thinking even, but you can do that just by flipping it upside down, and you start with why, then you're going to do how, and then you're going to do what. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to walk you through why you need to do what you do. I'm going to justify your existence for you. And maybe that will be useful to you when you go to your administrators. And the second thing is I want you also to get a sense of being able to sell the why to your students as well. And then when your students have the why down, they're going to be engaged. They're going to understand how you're doing what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then the whats are going to come. The right whats are going to come. So that's the agenda today.